F-Zero is a futuristic racing series by Nintendo, a franchise that drowned in obscurity before receiving a small sense of resurgence with a newish title back in 2023. And over the years, I've noticed many different developers making futuristic racing games, and seeing this series hit its 30s, it's hard to deny how much inspiration such games got from these cities of Mute, these blues of Big. Playing a bunch of indie racers got me thinking about the F-Zero series a lot, as it was certainly one of the cornerstones of my childhood gaming experience. I'ma go ahead and toot an annoying toot. I knew about the F-Zero Grand Prix a bit before our cap served mean falcon punches and electric knees in the Super Smash Bros. Series. I recall getting F-Zero X as a Christmas gift back in 1998. I'd like to thank whomever the Toys R Us employee was that likely gave my mother a blind recommendation when she went around Christmas shopping for me and my brothers. She probably asked, "What's a good game to get my sons for the Nintendo?" And perhaps the guy deduced that she specifically meant Nintendo 64. Like my video titled I Freakin Love Metal Slug, this is going to be a more personal take on the series and my own experience with the franchise up to this point in my life, but I'll make some observations on the games and their development throughout. With that said, let's go! I have very faint memories of playing the original F-Zero on SNES, perhaps at a friend or relative's house, but it obviously didn't stick with me at the time. I did have a Super Nintendo as a kid, but my only vivid memories are losing as Blanca in Street Fighter 2, dying a lot in Contra 3, beating Turtles in Time countless times, and giving up on Super Mario Kart because it was boring. F-Zero was a launch title for the Super Nintendo, designed to show off the Mode 7 effect that the console was able to pull off, providing 3D-ish gameplay and atmosphere on a 2D-based console. I almost wish I did have a copy of F-Zero as a kid, since playing it now made me realize it is easily better than any other racing game on the Super Nintendo, maybe the best of that generation. Having this kind of gameplay at a fast pace and smooth frame rate was definitely impressive for this little yellow shaded beast. And it's still a very competent racing game now. But anyway, I'm bringing this up because I didn't give this game the fairest shake back in the day. Playing the original F-Zero on the higher difficulties made me realize it's really got teeth, and competing in these Grand Prix Cups over and over, dying and retrying for long periods of time, encouraged me to learn a lot of the lesser known mechanics and nuance within the game's physics. Master Mode is still a nightmare for me though. Talking more about the core gameplay, it's as straightforward as any other racer for the most part. Do your best to get in first place, right? Yes, but something that separated this from the rest was its boost mechanic. You're tasked to do 5 laps in each race, and clearing a lap grants you a single boost power. You can stack 3 at once, but no more. While it is possible for some of the vehicles to win without using a boost, it makes for a great clutch when you need to get ahead quickly. Of course, at the same time, it might be unwise to use the boost when you can't maintain control of your car during sharp turns or perilous roads. But the first lap of every race just has you driving the course without any sort of aid, so the way I always saw the boost power was this challenge that you understand the track by driving through the first lap. Now that you've gotten familiar, you should know when it's best to boost on the 3rd, 4th, or 5th lap. It's like the game is challenging you to make notes of sharp turns, upcoming obstacles, and the breeziest part of the course, as it would be most optimal for a regular player using the boost in order to take the most advantage of it, as it can make or break your lead. You also have a health bar. You need to make sure not to take up too much damage from hitting borders or other vehicles, otherwise you can lose your driving ability when your health is low, or the entire race altogether when it completely depletes. The only way to regain health is using these energy strips where a machine heals you while you're under it. The way they're usually placed as shoulders during the race is a clear inspiration to actual F1 racing pit stops. This all adds to the intensity and demand of the game. It's not just a regular race, it is also a game of elimination. While there's only 4 unique racers to choose from, the game is populated by 15 racers in total, and a bunch of, I don't know, are they supposed to be pedestrian cars? This is a racetrack, but these specific vehicles are not part of the actual race. Maybe it's an homage to illegal street racing too, like how sometimes there's innocent drivers in the middle of a road 2 guys are racing on. Not that I have any actual street racing experience, I'm just going by what I've seen in movies and TV shows. I don't know. But they're specifically designed to throw you off as you try to clear the track. Just one stray car can prove to be the biggest nuisance, as even a little bump into them can send your car flying off and ruining your momentum. Each lap eliminates a handful of the racers lagging the most behind, down to only the top 3 being able to clear the final lap. If you're lower than 3rd place by the last lap, you automatically lose. And lives are limited, so you can't just keep retrying the same race. You can't get by the Grand Prix if you hit 4th place once or twice like a carded Mario. You need to be good. Top 3 in every single race or you're out. You've got to have surgical precision in order to finish in 1st place in just about all of these courses when you're playing in Master Mode. They clearly didn't take that title lightly, because not only are your opponents super efficient in driving these courses, not only do they rubber band to keep up with you, no matter how well you're driving, they are total assholes that will brake check you. Sometimes it's because you're directly behind them for a little too long, or sometimes they just feel like it. The intensity of its difficulty is further matched by the raw gameplay itself. What really separates this from, say, Super Mario Kart is how high these stakes are. When you go off course in Mario Kart, it doesn't take much to get back on track and keep driving. But for F-Zero, not only do you severely slow down, but you take damage as the borders are all electrified and running out of energy means death. If you fall off the course in Mario Kart, you just get picked up and sent on your way to keep racing. But F-Zero? Your driver is burning alive as you sit there on this lingering shot of the fiery rubble that was your vehicle. And even the tiniest mistake can also lead to an immediate death. Clawing my way to victory in as many of these cups as I could made me appreciate the intensity of the game itself, as well as the atmosphere surrounding the courses. So, let's talk about that for a bit. While at first glance, the stages don't seem too different from each other, it's their backgrounds and music that show real distinction. I mean, besides the track design. I'm talking about the ambiance, you know? There's a handful of unique environments that house a number of courses. The high-tech mess of towers in Mute City, the clear skies and sun-drenched shores of Big Blue, the remains of the deceased in Death Wind, etc. Accentuating the uniqueness of each venue type is, of course, the music. F-Zero's soundtrack has a very jazzy feel, emphasizing on what sounds like horn instruments inside the SNES sound chip. Just listen to the chorus of Mute City, really feeling like the beginning of this great race. Every track has this considerably subdued layer of intensity that perfectly suits the game itself and adds to the minimal atmosphere provided with its backgrounds and track layout. One track that specifically stuck with me is Death Wind. It's very simplistic with what sounds like a quiet snare drum and these low keys, but what else do you hear? The wind. This track's main gimmick would be the blowing winds manipulating your car's trajectory, and rather than using another sound channel for a game that's already utilizing so many, the composers injected wind sounds into the track itself. This must have been a way for them to conserve the sound channels, but it also serves as an example of creative development under limitations. While F-Zero excels in having smooth gameplay along with a nice looking 3D perspective, the console's limitations still held back aspects of ambition. The developers couldn't do anything that crazy with the course designs, thus they were all flat plains with only their map structures and obstacles doing the legwork to differentiate them. Regardless, having this kind of game on a home console must have been very impressive back in 1990. I don't want to sound like I'm disparaging the overall design either. I guess I'm just admiring a simpler time. F-Zero doesn't have a story per se, but it does have a world. A lot of this is built through the instruction manual itself. I'm sure I'm not the only one that never took the time to look at game manuals when I was a kid, especially the games I'd never actually owned, but it sets up Captain Falcon as the main character, drawn up by Takaya Imamura, the lead artist for the game. Captain Falcon is a bounty hunter who built his reputation in this racing competition known as F-Zero, an evolution of Formula 1 racing as we know in the real world today. Which is appropriate considering the game's director, Kazunobu Shimizu, was the director and designer for early F1 racing games on the Famicom years before F-Zero. The prequel comic was featured inside the instruction manual and was created by Art Nichols and Bob Layton, two Western artists who also drew many pieces for the game, including the Japanese cover. Devs behind F-Zero, including Shimizu, insisted on Western artists creating the world of the game through the cover and instruction manual in order to ensure it would be received well in Western markets. Funny enough, despite this influence, they did not draw the cover for the Western versions. This would also influence the game's visual design, which has this cool, slightly edgy vibe going on while taking a lot of color coding and style from 70s sci-fi action and maybe some tokusatsu goodness. But why did the F-Zero competition begin in the first place? Because the so-called elites got bored. The multi-billionaires of the world, after gaining their riches through intergalactic trading in this futuristic setting, thrived for entertainment of more visceral variety. They funded the fruition of these technologically advanced racing circuits that float almost 30 stories high, reaching the height of many skyscrapers. This actually got me thinking about the connection between billionaire capitalists and the racing league itself in the world of F-Zero. Many sporting events in real life are typically open to the public, whether through means of live event stadiums or television broadcasts. Of course, that's not the case when it comes to attending the actual event. Whether it be rented venues or dedicated stadiums, there's always exclusive seatings that are reserved for those of higher status. You're either invited to these special seats or you have enough money to pay for a spot, if that's even an option to begin with.
What's important is not the fact the reservations are hard to get. In fact, no one gets reservations. The words reservations only apply only to those outside of the circle. It's getting into that circle that matters.
Hell, executives at Nintendo know a thing or two about that. Minoru Arakawa, Nintendo of America's president at the time, attended a boxing match where he'd be inspired after seeing future champion Mike Tyson destroy his opponent in a match, thus leading to the famous Punch-Out tie-in deal. I don't know, something tells me he wasn't in the nosebleeds of that match. So, who is usually depicted in these high-rise towers, admiring the view of the atmosphere far below them? Executive fat cats, rich CEOs, these kinds of folks. There's this layer of exclusivity when it comes to sporting events and such that cater to these types of people, so it makes sense that something like F-Zero could only be witnessed in person by the kind of people with these high-rise views. There are no seats for the working class below them. Only those in their ivory towers can witness the sporting event that they have funded. I just think that's kind of interesting. Speaks for the type of people that compete in these races. While some are simply wealthy enough to afford their own gravity-defying vehicles, others are implied to reach these opportunities through more desperate means. Captain Falcon, for one, seems to only afford racing through his bounty hunting gigs. It's also implied that the only way Samurai Goro was able to compete is with a vehicle he stole, the Fire Stingray, which is a neat detail. To me, this explains why, unlike the other three named racers, the motif of the vehicle does not match Goro's aesthetic at all. This sense of the lower class gaining such opportunities reminds me of how, while some athletes come from a place of wealth or inheritance, others came from absolutely nothing, merely being lucky enough to get noticed by the right people or find their own way onto such a stage. World building doesn't really go beyond that, as the rest of the game is just a race to the finish in a system that encourages you to stay in the upper ranks, not just survive. F-Zero is a really cool, tough-as-nail game that rewards precise driving skills with that #1 spot. Of course, the futuristic racer wouldn't really find its stride until the next generation, that game being...
音より速い奴らがやってきた。世界最速レースゲーム。
When Nintendo got serious about the next generation and 3D graphics, they created the Nintendo 64, and many games in their library would see installments in this new dimension, and our racers would not be left out as we got F-Zero X. The X stands for fucking extreme! Not really, I actually don't know what the X stands for, but hey, it was the 90s. It checks out. Sounds better than F-Zero 64. I guess that would have technically just been F64. Now developed for the more advanced hardware, which can render real-time 3D, the course designs don't have to be completely flat anymore. The racetracks sport big loops, bigger jumps, hills, and tubes. These course designs really helped accentuate futuristic anti-gravity racing action. F-Zero X would also come with much more personality. Unlike the first game, we got to see the pilots themselves as we're selecting our car. They show up on the left side of the screen as 6 leading racers, and there's even ending cards for the characters when you win a Grand Prix in the harder difficulties. No story in the game nor the manual, although the latter does have profile descriptions of all 30 racers so you can learn a bit of their background. The original game went for a rather hokey style of older comic books as well as the more prominent action and sci-fi entertainment of the late 70s with a hint of edge. F-Zero X, however, went harder on the comic book style while also giving a more dystopian vibe, kind of like heavy metal. There's actually a lot I'm willing to compare between F-Zero X and heavy metal, at least regarding the movie, and the vibe goes perfectly with the game's visuals. Although they are very minimalistic like the first game, something about their distance and foggy appearances make all the areas look like a fucking bomb hit them, and the only thing our contestants have left is the thrill of the race. It could just be how they wanted to portray the height and depth of the courses, which even wrap around tall skyscrapers at times. Remember what I said about privileged ivory towers? The music makes a huge contribution to F-Zero X's personality as well, going for this ridiculous hair metal vibe. It's no surprise that the guitar dominates the rest of the instrumentals. The composers knew this game was going to be more intense with a faster tempo, so it needed a different musical direction. The chemical X juiced into the F-Zero formula, if you will. As charming as the original jazzy soundtrack is, I don't think it would have been able to carry the energy this kind of game needed. So the hair metal and hype electronica blends perfectly with the absolute intensity this game oozes. And I love some of the titles they gave these tracks. Fall Down to the Scream, The Devil's Call in Your Heart, The Long Distance of Murder. Let's talk further about that intensity that is the core gameplay. It's awesome! A complete evolution to the original F-Zero, much like many transitions of Nintendo franchises when they had to make the jump from 2D to 3D gameplay. Well, I mean, the original F-Zero was pretty 3D as it is, you know, the perspective and all, but now it was able to evolve in different ways, adding mechanics and elements that couldn't be achieved on a 2D based console. Of course, the game still rewards an airtight understanding of the mechanics and efficient driving. Everything is just a lot faster now, a lot more hectic. And there are only more perils than ever before, like borderless roads, crazy high ramp-off jumps, tubes and hilly roads that can knock you off course faster than you can yell fuck! And the other racers are so aggressive, seeing them kill each other is a common occurrence. Also, the selectable roster is expanded to 30 unique racers. Each of them have their own sets of stats that separate body, how much health the vehicle has, boost, how fast your boost power is, and grip, how well your vehicle turns without sliding out. Gone are the bystander vehicles, as the Grand Prix is now populated by 29 unique opponents racing against you from beginning to end. You can even tweak your vehicle before each race, selecting a balance between acceleration and max speed. Personally, I feel you always want to lean towards max speed in order to increase your chances of winning. Not all the way though, you need some acceleration at least. But this is coming from a bozo that only barely manages to beat Master Mode on a good day. I know speedrunners do some crazy shit on the other side of this tweaking bar. The Grand Prix gives you a selection of 3 separate cups with 2 unlockable cups afterward. Each cup contains 6 unique racetracks, and you accumulate a set amount of points that give you an overall rank at the end of each race. The higher you place, the more points you get. First being a full 100 points per race. With this new point system, the elimination mechanic was completely removed. While it's obviously still wise to get as close as you can to first place, hitting a low rank doesn't make matters hopeless depending on how many races are left in the current Grand Prix. The boost system would be revamped as well and remain a consistent mechanic for nearly every single game after. Just like with the original F-Zero, the first lap has you driving as well as you can in order to get familiar with the course before the race really gets going. Once you hit lap 2, you hear the iconic phrase, and instead of being a separate utility with limited uses, the boost power is tied to your energy meter or health. Using boost power eats up your health, which can only be restored when driving over these pink strips, which are placed more uniquely than the original restoration strips on SNES. So this is still tied to challenging the player to memorize the course and strategize where you need to boost in order to overtake the other racers. But now it's not just a handful of boosts throughout the whole race. If you play right, you can boost a whole bunch of times in every single lap, besides the first one, and also keep in mind where you're able to restore health, granting you even more boost. And dissimilar to the original game, I think, the opponents also utilize boost power, so they've got this at their disposal as well. It's a really brilliant aspect of the game's design not seen in any other racer at the time, helping accentuate how unique this series is. However, you need to be careful and use it intelligently, because if you boost too much and drain that health bar, a little tap can lead to losing the whole race. F-Zero X not only encourages the player to be precise with their driving, but aggressive too. A new element to the core gameplay would be your forms of attack. Tapping Z or R lets you do a hard shove on either side, which can kill an opponent immediately if you hit their car directly. It can also be used for tight turns, which I like to do. There's also the spin attack you can do by hitting one of these buttons twice while holding the other down. It can be risky, but if you have opponents surrounding your ride, you become a whirlwind of death. Pico would be proud. Also, getting 5 kills in one race grants you a bonus life, encouraging the destruction further. This call for aggression gets even louder with how the game will mark your rival in any Grand Prix past the first race. This is the racer who's directly below you in the ranks when you're first place in the overall Grand Prix, or whoever is top ranked when it isn't you. The game is essentially telling you, hey, you want to ensure top rank? Want to be number 1? Take this, jump out. Make it so they get 0 points when you clear this race. And if the rival does manage to die or fall off course, the rival marker hops to the next opponent in the ranks. I tells ya, seeing that rival marker always gets the bloodlust going. The bots definitely have a sense of bloodlust too, going aggro whenever you get close. Sometimes they just cause a total mess by spinning and knocking everyone around, usually just when you're nearby. Oh, and the habit of brake checking? Yeah, that's still a thing. The developers even ensure the bot racers act differently depending on who you pick for the Grand Prix, as each character is given a contextual rival, so they're more likely to keep up with you in the assortment of races. Although it's a little hard to tell sometimes, especially if you're smashing up racers all willy-nilly, but I have seen particular racing companions and rivals stick together a lot, so I think even the bots themselves are influenced in this manner. I think this addition of being able to attack and defeat other racers is a real defining factor that separates the original game with its main sequels. Not only does this make races more intense with the prosperity of easy victories, you're also challenged to balance this with ultra-tight precision racing. Get too careless and that miscalculated shove or spin attack can cost you the whole race. You can even hone your killing skills in Death Race mode, which has you pitted with all 29 racers in a straight course, and your only objective is to kill them all as fast as you can. Driving further into the presentation, there's a lot more characterization on display throughout the game. The title screen shows just about all the pilots you get to drive as, most prominently the initial 4 racers. And vahoom! You've got the hard rock playing in all the menus, babes holding up the selections, and full body art of each pilot as you choose your vehicle for the Grand Prix. Takaya Imamura served as lead artist once again, and boy did he serve! These portraits are so awesome. I adore the art style at play, and it really helps F-Zero X maintain its legacy, I think. Getting more into the visuals, it's fair to say it has almost the same sense of minimalism as the original F-Zero. It's pretty common knowledge that this game's graphical fidelity is very low with a small amount of textures and simplistic backgrounds. This was because the developers wanted to ensure F-Zero X ran at a rock-solid 60 FPS, an extremely rare case for the Nintendo 64 where even its first-party games would give PC pros an aneurysm. The fact that this game ran at 60 FPS was such a big deal, the commercials would even brag about it. So why did F-Zero X need to run at 60 FPS? Because it's a goddamn racing game. Just like fighting games, any racing game worth a shit runs at 60 FPS across the board because it makes button inputs that much more responsive, adding to the demand for driving precision. I'm glad they had the sense to ensure this game played as perfectly as it could, which is more than I could say about later developers on even stronger hardware. A neat bonus feature is the X Cup, unlocked after beating all the preceding cups. What makes this unique is the courses are all procedurally generated. You'll never experience the same track more than once. This stemmed from a project they were working on where any player would create their own courses as well as vehicles. This was the main feature of the F-Zero X expansion kit, released exclusively in Japan for the Nintendo 64 DD nearly 2 years after the original game. Not gonna say too much about the expansion kit beyond how impressive it was for its time. You can consider it a strictly direct sequel since it bore its own Grand Prix cups with the new tracks as well as new music, so that's cool. As for the X Cup itself, the courses are never much to write home about. Most of the time you get pretty basic designs. You can almost think of them as accidental throwbacks to how the original game's courses were designed when they're so flat and uninteresting. However, there are times where it'll come up with a funny little design that ends up wiping out most, if not all, of the racers. That's pretty much everything I have to say about this classic N64 game. F-Zero X stands to be a lot of people's favorite game in the series, maybe even their favorite racing game, period. And I can see why. It's so intense, and beating out the competition in Expert and especially Master difficulty is so gratifying. However, it would be the next main console installment that would really take that crown for me. Not just my favorite F-Zero game, not just my favorite racing game, but let's get right to it, huh? The 6th generation of consoles was a very interesting time for Nintendo. This was the area they would launch the Nintendo GameCube, and it seemed like they became more willing to work with various other game companies in regards to developing exclusive titles based on their IPs. While Rareware was always in their pocket throughout the 4th and 5th generation, Nintendo never actually owned the studio. Therefore, the folks at Rareware would end up settling a deal with Microsoft in the early 2000s, becoming a development team exclusively for Xbox. Well, besides a bunch of handheld games, I guess.
It's Mr. Pants. Hello, everybody.
But what I'm getting at is, perhaps this early shift in the Nintendo family told them they had to start getting serious support from third-party developers and new teams altogether. There was that Resident Evil deal they scored with Capcom, which included exclusive games as well as some ports, Retro Studios being assigned to create Metroid Prime, which became an iconic masterpiece, and perhaps not as discussed as those deals, the Triforce, the nickname of an arcade board that was emblematic of a short period where developers within Nintendo, Sega, and Namco made up one powerful force to create a couple Mario Kart arcade games. And a new F-Zero! Let me take you back to the past for a second. It was summer of 2003, all the kids were on summer vacation, and it was scorching hot outside in New Jersey. The Iraq War was well underway, musicians were letting out their anti-something protests in their singles, and I was enjoying the beautiful summer weather, indoors, playing video games. And if I wasn't at home playing video games, I'd be inside a dark, air-conditioned arcade playing video games. Specifically one that took pride in having the latest and greatest arcade games with properly maintained machines. I remember being there and seeing some flyers teasing games they were getting soon. What's this? F-Zero AX? And then game magazines started showing previews for this brand new game hitting arcades and the GameCube around the same time. I couldn't believe what I was seeing as a kid. A brand new F-Zero game for the GameCube? And arcades? And it's being developed within Sega, the fallen rival of Nintendo? Funny thinking back to that, I was only 12 years old at the time, but even then, aware of the rivalry Nintendo and Sega once had with each other. I could even recall game magazines talking about the companies working in tandem like they were two celebrities being seen together in candid photos or some shit. Of course, in retrospect, this was a match made in heaven. F-Zero GX on GameCube, or AX for the arcade version, would be developed by a team within Sega AM4, or Amusement Vision. This team actually made a bunch of awesome arcade games, and Toshihiro Nagoshi was part of the roster as well, serving as head producer. He was the director of Daytona USA, which is an absolute classic. According to him, F-Zero GX was a passion project, as he demanded that if he were to work with Nintendo at all, the only game he'd want to make is a brand new installment to F-Zero. I experienced the arcade version first, but I'll talk about that in a bit. F-Zero GX arrived during that same summer of 2003, and my god, after the initial file creation, that game wanted it to be known that it had arrived with its title screen. Already, what an entrance! This game is the equivalent to that Thrill House scene in almost every sense.
This is great! And all I've done is enter my name! Thrill House!
While seemingly similar at the surface to each other, F-Zero GX plays a lot differently from its N64 counterpart. One thing that really sets it apart is the absolute frenetic energy oozing out of GX. Things would get wild in F-Zero X here and there, but GX is on a whole other level. And when you get that boost power, things only get cranked up more, catching these glimpses of them gaining insane speed in just seconds and barreling through parts of the course. In a way, this makes sense since the average speed has been cranked up as well. Do I need to compare footage? Well, I will anyway. It's a world of difference, and when you add the boost power, that km/h meter is going haywire. Sometimes shit gets so crazy I end up flying off course without even remotely understanding what caused it.
What the fuck did you just call me?
The effects do a lot of work here, as F-Zero GX doesn't just have better graphics, not only do they have textures on everything, but all the visual and audio feedback have so much more going on now. One of the best examples would be how unique the exhaust fumes are on each car. Every single one not only looks different when they boost, but they all sound different too. Check it out. I am stunned by the amount of detail this game has. It reminds me of how the Gran Turismo devs recorded the engines of each individual car in the roster, so they all sound more accurate in-game. Most people aren't even going to notice that insane level of detail, but they were just that dedicated to achieving such a level. This is also the first time we can actually see the racers themselves in their vehicles. Not that you'll ever really notice while playing, but look nice as fuck when you're checking out replays. They even move their arms when turning and look at other racers nearby. Seeing that kind of magnified detail and love put into something like F-Zero is, well, it's just amazing. I absolutely love the course designs in this game too, which goes even harder than X. Sometimes they look simple enough, other times they look like your wired earbuds after getting shoved into your pocket. I remember shuddering the thought of taking on some of these courses just from looking at the map. Of course, these days I remember every single upcoming twist, turn, hill, and pit like the back of my soul. Disclaimer, this does not mean I'm good at racing them. Like the other games, each course has a short description of its specialty. Split roads, cylinder tracks, things like that. Oh, but for Big Blue 2? It's just described as an ordeal, as in a painful or horrific experience. On Master Mode, ain't that the fucking truth. The call for absolute precision feels higher than before, but that's appropriate considering this was made for the GameCube, a controller with a much better analog stick. The game itself feels tighter and generally faster. That probably has to do with all the vehicles maintaining a higher average of km/h than in the N64 game, and sliding doesn't impair your speed nearly as much as before. I understand more and more why Nintendo was okay with the Monkey Ball devs to take on such a project. It even uses the same engine. With that said, going faster makes shit come at you faster, and boy does it get crazy, fast. The eye-ripping intensity of the gameplay is perfectly coded by the music. I can't help but cram this video with clips of songs I like. All three of these games just have fantastic music. This soundtrack was composed by Hidenori Shoji, a Sega alumni for years at that point, and Daiki Kasho, best known for his soundtrack work on most of the Gran Turismo series. There's a unique song for every specific track environment, and unsurprisingly, each song exudes this Y2K energy exquisitely. Some wouldn't love it as much as the F-Zero X tracklist since they dropped the heavy metal vibe, but instead this blend of rock and techno. However, this is my jam, 100%. Some of these songs feel like they'd be right at home in the Matrix, you know? soundtrack also has this really cool thing where the song cranks up the intensity as soon as you hit the final lap. For most cases, it's almost like a remix of the song you were just hearing. The final lap mix always sounds more potent and just adds this edge of your seat feeling. Mario Kart has a similar thing, but all they do is increase the speed of the song you were already listening to. In F-Zero GX, it's a new mix altogether. If there's any time to bust out the gamer posture, it's when you start hearing that final lap mix. Every track song is an absolute banger too. The baddie horns wailing in Casino Palace perfectly suit its mutated Vegas venue. These toothy guitars depicting Sand Ocean and its miles-long lethal desert full of giant beasts. Is toothy even a term for guitars? Whatever. The sunny shores of Big Blue once again just make me want to feel the sun and cool winds on my face at a roaring 1,000 kilometers per hour. And Mute City, my darling Mute City. Oh my god. Whenever I hear this song, my mind is always flung back to that summer of 2003. Let's go back to that time for a second. When I first laid my eyes on that beautiful machine, F-Zero AX at my local arcade, and it was the deluxe model with a moving seat. The quarters couldn't leave my pocket fast enough. I was so excited to play a brand new F-Zero game in this monster of a machine. This beast was loud as fuck, louder than anything else in the joint. I clipped that little seatbelt on, ready to race. First stage I picked was the basic oval course, which was decorated with the new Mute City design. This mess of a futuristic, bustling city. I started that course and was like, hey, the character portrait's on the top left, just like F-Zero X. Oh yeah, I'm ready. The music is building up, the countdown is counting down, and when it sounds off, the engines are roaring, my seat's moving, and when I got that boost power, oh, I was neck deep in pure gaming ecstasy. It's such a simple course, but the neon futuristic visuals, the amazing song caked with these incredible sound effects of the boost, the slides, the other racers pushing past me, God, everything about this experience topped with the moving seat, how else can I describe it? Immersive. It was absolutely immersive. For but a moment, I was fully enveloped into the world of F-Zero. So the song from Mute City is mostly an original mix, and it's good. It's fast-paced, intense, fits that futuristic vibe more snugly than the right puzzle piece, but once that classic chorus comes in, oh my god. I still get emotional hearing it. I swear, if I think about that moment in my life long enough, I could just cry. No other video game has ever made me feel the way I felt when I first played F-Zero AX. It's a feeling I have this longing nostalgia for, because I know I'll never get to experience that kind of dopamine discharge ever again for the rest of my life. And what's crazy is, there was an even more insane version of this machine called the Monster Ride, which I guess I'll just never get to experience. Update. To my surprise, there still exists one single Monster Ride machine in working condition, and people are able to go and play the game. I guess I'll be able to play the F-Zero AX Monster Ride version if I ever find myself in Kuwait? There's a handful of moments in my life that mean so much to me. Moments where all I can think of is a quote sung by K-Flay.
We all have memories that we can't return to.
Just thinking about that line or reading it aloud brings me back to a bunch of landmarks in my life and gets me emotional. And that day at the arcade is one of them.
Attaboy. But when I turned up in
New City,
something strange overcame me.
This takes me back.
But I think I've gotten sappy enough. The raw gameplay always has this intensity layered in it with the help of the music, the visuals, what we've covered so far. But all of that wouldn't feel as fulfilling if the game wasn't really, really hard. More often than not, all 29 bot racers drive with sheer aggro. Expert mode expects you to understand the controls of the game and how to properly react throughout the courses. Master mode expects you to do all that and murder your rivals every chance you get, essentially, because there's no way you're going to get first place fair and square for most of the races. Speaking more on the driving and the smashing and the dying, opponents are generally more aggressive than in F-Zero X. They also have more tendency to defend themselves. You usually catch them spinning the moment you've got them lined up for a perfect shove, rendering them invincible for that moment. It's like they just know you want to knock them off course and try to mess up your plans. F-Zero GX has become pretty infamous for its ball-tearing difficulty, but we've only scratched the surface as to why that's the case. I'd like to get into the presentation some more. I will say a rather stark change would be the game's art style. That heavy metal vibe from F-Zero X was completely dropped in order to provide a much more slick, cleaner style. Which makes perfect sense. They were trying to really show off the power of the GameCube itself, making everything look so slick and smooth was definitely the right call. And there's something really charming about how all three consoles at the time had this sense of "we are the future" aesthetic during this generation. This strong sense of a digitized world was prevalent in many games during the generation, as well as the console menus themselves. So much of it felt bizarre and mysterious. Like the future and the technology it bore was otherworldly to us lowly peons. These fictionalized futures weren't just super clean, slick, and shiny, they were also metallic and cold. The PS2 really exuded this type of appeal, but it was present for the GameCube as well. With that said, entering F-Zero GX felt like this celebration that you are now in the future! Speaking of futuristic style, shout out to the devs for providing native widescreen and progressive scan. Not a whole lot of GameCubes had these features, and also analog calibration. This makes the controls feel extra nice in case you're, not using a GameCube controller. It might sound a bit silly, but these kinds of things feel like they future-proofed the game itself. How appropriate for a game that's set in the distant future, huh? No longer did F-Zero have to sacrifice graphic appeal in order to maintain 60 frames per second. The GameCube was powerful enough to give us the best of both worlds. In fact, I don't think it's wrong to say F-Zero GX is one of the best looking games of its generation. It finds this perfect balance of amazing graphical fidelity and wonderful futuristic artistry in its visuals. A good way to put it is that a lot of games during this era and before tend to lose a bit of their appeal when you're up-resing it to a higher definition monitor instead of viewing it on a standard def CRT. But for F-Zero GX, I believe it's one of the few cases where its visuals are only enhanced by this newer sense of clarity. Just ignore that, and that, and that, and that, and that. Frankly, this makes it even more confusing that it was never properly ported or remastered, but then again, I don't think Nintendo has the best track record when it comes to HD remasters. With the entire cast of F-Zero X returning, this was also the first time nearly everyone was presented in 3D. You know, with the exception of a select few in the Super Smash Bros. Games. And I guess that weird Eid ending with the expansion kit. But a lot of them transitioned pretty well. Tons of subtle and not so subtle redesigns varied in mileage. There are some changes I'm not a fan of, looking at them now. Jodie Summer's probably the best example. In F-Zero X, she had a pretty tough look to her. I'm almost willing to say she served as an homage to Tarna from Heavy Metal. Like, she's pretty, but assertive and badass too. Well, from the little peeks we get into her personality, something that would even reflect on her in future depictions. We even got to see how this design would look in 3D as a trophy in Smash Bros. Melee. I really like how she looked in X. She's actually one of my favorite racers to pick in that game. And check out those kicks. Her design is awesome. But for GX, they essentially morphed her into a Barbie doll. Gigantic blue eyes, much softer features, and severely slimmed down. Just doesn't look right to me.
Driving thong?
At least Mrs. Arrow got to keep her muscle mommy physique, and be proud of it. Look at that. And that. Thinking about that stupid ass debate I've been seeing lately about whether or not women should have muscles, but I think I see where these devs stand. Pico is another example, and another favorite of mine in X. He had this darker nature to his appearance, aided by the heavy shading in his art, but in GX, they rounded out everything and simplified his design, so now he just looks like a Power Rangers goon. I like his idle animation though. Same case for Biorex, I could go on. Just about everyone was either rounded out to look less threatening and badass, or very pointy. I'm not sure what that's about. A lot of these characters are just super pointy in some parts now. But I barely ever feel like complaining about any of this, even now, because just about everything looks and sounds so unbelievably gorgeous. The change also made sense considering the direction they went for. The original F-Zero had these courses in places where you can barely see any real sense of civilization due to their altitude, as well as the simplicity of the background sprites. Same for F-Zero X, but it felt more dystopian, at least to me. Besides a couple courses, much of the areas are surrounded by rundown artifacts of a once thriving society. The only real sense of societal representation was when your victory is celebrated at the end of the Grand Prix. With that said, the characters all having this Mad Max heavy metal vibe in F-Zero X made perfect sense. It blended well with the actual game. They certainly couldn't gel as well with F-Zero GX, as now the courses and races seem much more embodied within the society societies they are a part of. Except, when it looks like you're thrown into another dimension. As someone that grew up with the Y2K aesthetic of a pretend future, I can't help but love the environment on display. The artists and graphic designers were clearly more inspired by this era they were living in, where it's this weird approximation of what some insane, smooth, clean, utopian future would look like, as well as some underbellies of various industries, all while having this insane technology that has never and will never make sense to literally anyone. Processing F-Zero file, huh? Yeah, okay. Going from the original game to X doesn't seem like that much of a stretch in time passing, but X to GX feels like a century's difference. Where did all this civilization come from? It almost feels like the game should have been accompanied with an entirely new cast of characters, not the same ones who haven't aged a day. But we did get new characters, totaling 41 distinct drivers. A lot of these new guys feel very Sega to me. They're all super cool though. Speaking more on the pilots, there's an entire profile section where you can read their character descriptions and see their models chilling or bouncing around. And the cherry on top has to be the unique theme songs each racer sports when checking out their profiles. It's so cool. The descriptions already tell you plenty, but the theme is almost further peering into the kind of individual they are. Unsurprisingly, Captain Falcon has the most extravagant, having pretty clear lyrics, and it really leans into that Sentai superhero vibe he exudes.
In this world you've got to be strong. You've got to fight to keep your spirit alive. And you might feel like there is nothing left to go forward and fight for. But it's the fight that keeps us ready and on guard. Even I can feel the power.
As for the presentation during actual gameplay, it's unsurprisingly fantastic. It all looks slick and futuristic, but with the right amount of grit and weight. No longer is the top 6 represented with portrait stills, but front-face renders, completely stoic as if the only thing on their mind is the race, rumbling, spinning, and reveling when appropriate. I cannot get over how pissed off everyone looks on the ranks. Nobody is here to have fun. The only fun part is hearing how ecstatic Mr. Zero is over your victory. Winning is the only fun part. Wow, they're just like me. Jack looks like the dog just shit on his rug. Billy looks like King K. Rool rolled into town. Jody looks like she's trying to ignore an ex that's nearby, and like, things ended amicably. You said you'll still be friends, but you know things will never sit completely right with either of you. But you need to stay polite since the two of you had mutual friends that you still want to see, and just the thought of seeing him with someone else might hurt too much, but this is a friends gathering. You told Monique you'd come to the party. Everyone's being chill, so you just gotta stand there. And Dr. Stewart looks like he's staring at the sun. Black Shadow looks like, well, Batman. Spade's not smiling. His face is just like that, permanently. Pico looks like he just found out someone else ate his lunch he was saving in the fridge. Also, I love how the less humanistic characters have their profiles angled during gameplay, breaking the consistency for the sake of the characters looking better while in the top 6. It's smart. You don't want them to pull a Mo Sislak, right? A fun reward system this game bears would be the interviews you get to conduct after getting first place in any Grand Prix. The harder the difficulty, the more interesting the questions are.
Which one of you is the fastest?
I handle the machine the best. I am the strategy whiz. I do speed control. That's how we win.
This is also the only part of the game you get to hear most of the characters speak, all with their own unique voices.
You're quite the gentleman.
The martial arts taught me good manners. I never really learned to fight though.
I see. What is that insignia on your back?
The Galaxy Dog logo. I designed it.
I see. What would you like to do in the future?
Rescue every octopus in the universe that's in danger of being eaten.
I see.
Hey, I didn't say you'd be able to understand them all. No big-time actors, but they were somewhat prominent in games and anime dubs during the 2000s, many of them voicing characters in the Shenmue games and a bunch of fighters. Some of them are actually still active. To be frank, the only name I recognize among them was Donna Burke, who voiced Angela in Silent Hill 2 and Claudia in Silent Hill 3. Oh, and she's Mrs. Arrow and Princia, the former being really funny because she just sounds like Angela for most of her takes.
He was beating around the bush, so I ordered him to marry me. Lost?
Of course, we've also got to talk about the infamous story mode. This is a big factor why people cite how hard the game is. This was an assortment of 9 different missions tied together with a narrative about Captain Falcon trying to get to a racetrack.
You stole the prize money from us last time. You will pay for that.
Please, consider it an old man's last request. Just calm down. So you want to play?
Guys, the party's just starting.
Of course, the simple story, awkward cutscenes layered with even more awkward voice acting aren't exactly what made this story mode so infamous, but because the missions themselves are absolutely vicious with their unrelenting difficulty. The Grand Prix races are tough enough, but I like to think the developers held themselves back a bit since you've got a limited life count to worry about. Story mode? Hell nah, you got an infinite amount of retries. Oh no, the bomb exploded on you again. Oh no, you fell off course again. Nut up, chumps. The first one is innocent enough, asking you to collect these giant pills within 3 laps and do it under a time limit. You've also got a race against a single rival around a short cliffside track with falling boulders, knocking out a bunch of gang drivers with your forms of attack, honestly, as I'm going through these so quickly, I realize they're basically these strict tests on how well you understand the controls and mechanics. As you're driving, dying, and retrying in these missions, you'll likely come to realize that these missions are a test of maneuverability, tight turns, avoiding perils, and forms of attack. It shouldn't be a surprise that the last 3 chapters are basic racing with little nonsense. The last one, Chapter 9, literally just being a time trial against the staff ghost, a common practice with Nintendo's racing games. Chapter 7, however, is the bane of many people's existence. If it wasn't already obvious how much the game aids the bots in order to keep its challenge level overflowing and at a boiling point, this chapter makes it more blatant than anywhere else, making two shit-ass cars, Black Bull and Bloodhawk, easily stay in the top 6 rankings pretty much all the time, just for narrative purposes. Kinda like what F-Zero X did during regular Grand Prix races. Anyway, I think this chapter was described best by Nipple Bandit on Something Awful's ancient forums, which some watching may already be familiar with. I'll do my best recreating the absolute wrath this individual was exuding through their keyboard. So here goes. Dear Nintendo, your cocksucking product has reduced me to a gibbering man-ape whose only resort to dealing with the almighty fucking grief it's bestowed upon me is to scream and hurt myself. Seriously, I am jumping up and down, throwing my shit in handfuls at the fucking television in some impotent, primal effort to get this thing to work. I've been sitting here, trying to enjoy your product, your game, your contract between developer and consumer, that the consumer will enjoy your product, but instead the damn thing's been crawling out of the console and taking warm shits in my gaping mouth. Swear to God, you should have just added a little door to the console through which a hand pops out and flips me off, because I am insulted that your QA or testers or whatever brainless shit stove 3 genes short of a monkey nut signs your games through thought that a person with more than a single fucking digit IQ could enjoy story mode chapter 7. Insulted. Work with me here. The goal's simple enough. Come in first. Hey, that's fine. It's just like playing the Grand fucking Prix. Not a problem. Only deal is your cross-eyed team of tongue-slapping wonderkind decided to give the game every single fucking advantage possible to the game rather than me. How in the fuck does Black Shadow, whose car is the heaviest and lamest piece of shit next to the Crazy Bear, suddenly become so fucking good that he can stay in first without using a drop of boost? Huh? Why? You never see this shithead go anywhere near the top fucking 20 in a normal race. But ho ho ho, this time he's Megacock, the fastest in the world. 1.21 gigawatts, Marty. Let's go back to the fucking future. But it's not just Black Shadow with the magical powers, it's the entire fucking lineup of racers. They're all faster than you and don't require any boost. But I, of course, am still driving some piece of shit hamster-powered jalopy who guzzles its entire energy bar in no less than 4 fucking boosts. Add to this, the entire course just got shitted on by some space tiki volcano god, and you've got a course full of hazards that'll drain at least 1/4 of your energy bar just because it can. Whoopee! You say, that's just a challenge. It's not supposed to be easy. Well, fuck that noise, you lopsided franken-faced fuckfurter. Tell me, please, why does the game have to win, huh? What happens when the game wins and I lose? Is there some huge fucking kegger waiting for it when it gets done? Is there money involved? Or perhaps the motives are more sinister. Maybe the game's family is being held hostage by another game, and that game has its cock in F-Zero's wife's mouth, and he's holding a cell phone up to her, and F-Zero can hear her pained moans and cries for help, and the asshole game then says, you beat that cock-sucking human or I'll blow her brains out. I could understand that. I can be sympathetic. It's not any fun if I can't win you. I want to move on. I want to unlock whatever piece of shit clown car you have hidden away from me so I can start racing and get pissed off with that too. When your game prevents me from fully enjoying the product I have bought, you have failed in your fucking mission to deliver a game. You lose. You break the contract. You contract the gay and fucking die. So in summary, shit's hard. Chapters 8 and 9 are no cakewalks, but definitely not as brutal as Chapter 7. Truly, 7, 8, 9 in this scenario. Although, Nipple Bandit might want to know the dirty little secret to this chapter. Don't try to stay in the top 3 at the final lap. This triggers the AI rivals to aggro. Well, aggro even more than their story mode Chapter 7 tweaked aggro. Stay around 6th or so, then overtake them at the last third-ish portion of the track with multiple boosts and smooth, precise driving. This isn't a guarantee that it'll work, and this shit is even more demanding on the harder difficulties, but I promise you that this will help you conquer the chapter. The story itself is nothing to write home about. Captain Falcon stomps some folks, helps some folks, achieves greatness in the midst of some sticky situations, watches Black Shadow fucking dissolve into nothingness, beats Satan and maybe some other gods, then goes home, decreeing he put in a good day's work. The story is fun though. It really likes showing off Captain Falcon as he glows his aura of greatness.
evil forces will never get their hands on this belt. I'll keep winning.
He even gets a second theme song. That's just how awesome he is. Of course, the cutscenes are not the only animated videos. Every single character has a unique bonus video you can only earn by completing one of the cups on Master Mode. These movies sport some of the most bizarre direction I've ever seen in a video game. So much of the animation is really stilted and bad. Everyone moves like they're stuck inside mascot costumes. Most of them are really off model too. While the interviews are sort of meant to be this peek into the characters' personal life, if you're lucky, the movies are rarely ever that. We usually just see them messing around. Most just end with a goofy punchline, and a handful of them share the same setting for some reason. Here's Antonio Guster doing his laundry. Here's Blood Falcon doing his laundry. Here's Lily Flyer doing her laundry, and also suddenly 50 years old. A lot of them are also just them dancing. Like, legit, all they do is dance around for a bit with some animated background. Here's PJ dancing. Here's Princia dancing. Here's James McCloud dancing. Here's John Tanaka dancing and then getting cucked. Maybe they just wanted to show off the motion captured animation. I don't know. In fact, the only one that wasn't treated like a gag was Pico's bonus movie. It's surprisingly serious and even adds a tiny bit of lore that he has some sort of vendetta against Black Shadow. Why? Who knows? There's also the customizable vehicles to speak of. While F-Zero GX couldn't bring back the custom racetracks feature the N64 expansion had, this was a nice extra too. You basically pick 3 main parts and combine them as they determine your stats. The names are made up from the parts you picked, making it easier to share if you've got a particularly good one. My go-to was Bright Goose Z, as it made any Grand Prix stupid easy. How does it feel to actually win some races, Pico? The arcade machines even had a GameCube memory card slot, which, if inserted and used during a race, would win the player a bunch of extra goodies like new decals for their vehicle. I believe this also lets you use a custom vehicle you made on the GameCube version, but I'm not sure. There were also pilot cards you could buy so you can save your progress and other things. I did have a pilot card, but sadly my arcade would remove the machine as it broke down, so I couldn't even try the GameCube memory card features. I love F-Zero GX. I spent so many hours just capturing footage because I wanted to keep playing. I ended up recording so much that I couldn't even fit into this video. I saw a tweet online and it made me think about the game as well as a few others. Sometimes you play a game that is so good, so perfectly crafted that you can feel the emotions welling up inside as you play. Those are the moments that remind you why the medium of video games is so special. And this helped me put into perspective why I adore F-Zero GX so much. Of course, there's been instances in my years playing video games where a certain game will hit me at an emotional level, maybe even get a bit teary-eyed, and that can happen for various reasons, usually story-related. Either it's incredibly well written, or perhaps the presentation itself is just so immaculate, you can't help but get caught up with the characters and their struggles. Video games are an art form, but I feel like people forget what that really means. I think the simplest way to put it is that art is a form of expression by an individual or group of people, whether that be film, poem, painting, or even video game. What are the creators expressing with something like this? Well, as far as I can tell, they were trying to express what they consider a perfect racing experience, and that in itself holds a lot of value to people. Not just a good-ass racing game, but the idea of perfection. And think about all the different kinds of things artists and creators express with their work. Some universally famous examples I can recall is how Godzilla was a product of Japanese filmmakers expressing their grievances with the bombing of Hiroshima and how it morphed their society, or a painting where its artist Keith Haring vented over his own life being cut short due to an incurable disease infecting his body, thus leaving this world too soon. He did not get to finish expressing himself in the world of art, hence its title, Unfinished Painting. Seriously, I didn't like Keith Haring's work until I saw this and was enamored. I take back whatever negative thoughts I've ever had of him as an artist. This shit moved me. What a champ. Another one is Kojima's Death Stranding. I'm not even that much of a Kojima nut, but was surprised how the raw gameplay hit me at a perfect point in my life. This would be another example of the art piece having this emotional core, and it's been described and theorized that the game has this lonely, almost nihilistic feeling due to the emotional turmoil Kojima himself was going through getting ousted by Konami after being part of them for literal decades. And that really struck me in certain ways back in 2019 because... never mind, whatever. But there's also this aspect of art where the creator is just providing what some would consider this perfect sense of execution, whether that's by their own personal scale or not. The perfect brush strokes and color use in a painting, the perfect shots in a piece of film, the perfect pacing in a poem, or the perfect symbolism or sense of nuance in a novel or a comic. I think people can be moved when they feel this sense of incredible execution and presentation in any form that it comes in. And that's what I feel when I play, see, or even think about F-Zero GX. Obviously, nostalgia plays into this as well for me. It's just... God, I love this game so fucking much. I'll always go back to it until I am dust. But is the game objectively perfect? No. If there's one thing worth criticizing about the gameplay, it's extremely unbalanced. All 30 returning racers sport the same stats from the N64 game, but only at face value. Some grippy, tight machines from F-Zero X are now slippery hunks of shit. Or the opposite is true. A lot of them control differently, even if we're taking the new physics system into account. This is something a lot of players recognize over years of studying the frenzied difficulty of this game. Like before, prioritizing max speed is the way to go in your settings option before each race, and even the best players can't snatch first place in certain courses no matter how hard they try. The rubber band is just too strong. Literal world records are hit in some of these courses and they still don't get first place. That's just actual bullshit. But that's when they aren't doing some crazy exploits that shit all over the game's design, which dedicated players and speedrunners have mastered over the decades. Obviously, stuff like this was not accounted for when they were developing the game. F-Zero GX is a deep piece of nostalgia for me. It was something I couldn't even share among friends. Not that I had a lot of friends, and even then, none of them were into F-Zero as much as I was. This game was a long-time obsession. Who am I kidding? I'm still obsessed with it. Even today, doing Master Mode races feels intense. I still clench every part of my body on that final lap. Frankly, I know I'm probably late to the party. People are still discovering this game and making videos raving about how good it is, and that makes me so happy, because everything about it still feels so perfect to me. So much that I still get really emotional watching these goofy cutscenes and even hearing some of the music. I'm sorry, just it always gets to me. With my later found love for the original F-Zero, it behooves me to at least bring up F-Zero Maximum Velocity, a launch title for the Game Boy Advance back in 2001. This was actually the first game I got for my GBA, being such a big fan of F-Zero X back when I was a kid. I definitely spent some time with this, but even I wouldn't say it thrilled me too much. It was clearly meant to resemble the original SNES game after all, so much so that it was actually directed by Kazunobu Shimizu, the director of the original F-Zero. Revisiting my adult life, it's not bad. Again, now having that deeper appreciation for the original game makes me enjoy this much more. Maximum Velocity also sports a cast completely unique to the rest of the series. This was depicted to be a whole new generation of F-Zero competitive racers, so that's kinda neat, but I doubt most people even got to see the characters. I like the music. It has a very SNES vibe going on. The controls are a little irritating though. Since the GBA had less buttons than the SNES, using boost was mapped to hitting L and R simultaneously. And maybe I'm just an idiot, but there's been times where the game decides I didn't do that and not give me my boost. L and R are already used to lean your vehicle in its respective direction, so when I'm just trying to get a boost to happen, it messes up my trajectory when it fails. It's just a clunky design. I would have preferred at least giving me the option to make it the select button or something. Maybe double tap one of the other buttons, I don't know. Racing doesn't feel as tight, but definitely gives you a bit more slack if you want to nab first place. Maximum Velocity was developed by a team known as ND Cube, who later tried to pitch a new F-Zero for the GameCube. This idea would later be reworked into an original game known as Tube Slider, which sucks. Nintendo likely rejected the idea of connecting the games to F-Zero, as GX was already in production during this time. Frankly, I'm surprised they were allowed to make this at all. Around the time F-Zero GX released, there was also an original anime series. Throughout its airing were 2 GBA games that served as companion pieces. The anime and its first companion game would hit Western regions about a year later. A Foxbox original. The anime lasted 51 episodes in Japan, but less than even half of that was officially dubbed in the West, complete with crappy editing of gunfights, removed violence, covered up titties, and awful, awful music. You know, the standard 4Kids abortion work. I imagine ratings weren't too great for this anime, hence its short lifespan here in Burgerland, but with that in mind, I guess it makes sense that the second half of the show's companion game titled F-Zero Climax was never released outside of Japan either. Unlike Maximum Velocity, F-Zero GP Legend tried to more closely resemble F-Zero X's design while maintaining the flat tracks of the SNES era. Makes sense. While the GBA was in fact capable of 3D rendering, trying to make the course design resemble F-Zero X would have likely shot the game's frame rate down the toilet. Boost power works the same, as well as the side attacks. No spin though. The entire cast from X is also included, alongside some original characters such as Rick Wheeler and others. There's even a story mode. For a little GBA game, I have to say this title was pretty packed, although I guess the story mode excuses the lack of character endings for the Grand Prix Cups. The gameplay itself is fine, but something about it feels off.
Four laps to go. You've got a new booster.
The physics are more restricted than the SNES game or even Maximum Velocity. And I also can't help but notice the other racers are dumb. I see them totally eat shit when trying to get through those tight turns and windy ways, even on Expert mode, the highest difficulty in the game. I sometimes count on the fact that these guys can't take certain turns correctly in order for me to steal first place. Less than a year later was F-Zero Climax, also for the GBA. What makes this installment just a few meters cooler would be the character art, all drawn by Takaya Imamura, the lead art director of F-Zero X. So that's cool. Everyone has way more personality in their portraits this time around. Climax just has better presentation overall, and they made it more closely resemble F-Zero X, even bringing back the spin attack. However, some of these races just feel outright unfair with poor design choices. While these games aren't outright bad, these days it's hard to really appreciate how they were compactly designed for these little GBA cartridges. At least as an adult. I mean, I can literally emulate F-Zero GX on my Steam Deck, and it runs perfectly. I can play the peak of the franchise anywhere I go now. So yeah, the hook of these games being handheld don't really grab me anymore.
Watch your back! There's another racer on your tail. You're holding a lead. Boost fire. Way to go!
Yep, and that's my thoughts on the Game Boy Advance games. Now let's move on to, oh, what's that? What about the anime itself? Alright, if I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really a fan. I didn't stick with it while it aired on Fox Kids back in the early 2000s, but I would later watch the complete series subbed by dedicated fans on YouTube, which are all still up. There's things about it I can appreciate. I never thought the entire cast of F-Zero X would ever be represented in anything outside of the actual games. Lord knows this humble racing series already has such a wide array of characters that can easily make the ensemble of a great animated series. Having just about everyone show up for even a moment throughout the anime's run is neat, even if some of these redesigns are kinda stinky. Here are a few I wanted to highlight, but I gotta focus on Captain Falcon. Seriously, why? Why are his clothes so baggy? My man is supposed to look ripped and proud of every part of his hard body. His washboard abs, perfect pecs, tight cheeks, kissable lips. Come on, Douglas, what are you doing? Oh, his name's Bart now? Oh, I get it, because he runs a bar. Ha, ha, ha. I also don't really appreciate how typecasted a lot of the characters are, especially the villains throughout. Like, sure, have Black Shadow as the big bad. That's obviously fine. But why are Octoman and Biorex in the bad guy crew? They have their own agendas. Octoman's just trying to put his kids through school. He does get his own episode where he's not all bad, though. Biorex tells you not to judge him by his appearance in F-Zero X. Dude just wants to get crunk behind the wheel. Anyone that looks remotely alien is immediately labeled as a bad guy as far as the anime is concerned. Yeah, sure, Pico is evil because he's the racist alien guy. Biorex and Octoman because they're anthropomorphic while also oviparous. The Skull is a bad guy too because he's got a skull face. And Baba's a bad guy too because he's gay.
Never underestimate a man in drag.
I really don't care for how they portray the racing action either. While this is probably the biggest issue I have with the anime, I don't really have a solution. I'm just saying that the races in the game are supposed to be fast-paced and full of tight turns. All skills require absolute precision for the best racing execution. So what are these Snorefest? All the racing and vehicle action looks the same. They just slap 2 or 3 vehicle models on a flat road, maybe put a bend in there once in a while. And these bozos got time to contemplate their lives, talk shit, do their taxes, and look behind for long-ass periods of time. This completely breaks the potential immersion that is supposed to be high-octane racing. They would have been better off splicing in modded gameplay footage of GX with the respective cars, honestly. It only makes things worse when you consider Redline. Yeah, you assholes knew this was coming. Of course, I have to bring up Redline. Can anyone really deny it? It's F-Zero in every sort of way. You know, besides the name, and the fact that it isn't a video game. It's not entirely fair to compare 51 episodes of the anime to this film that's less than 2 hours long. There's no way in hell a syndicated anime can look this good and run as long. Redline is notorious for being an grueling 7-year-long production. I just can't help but look at this movie, its wild atmosphere, its colorful cast of charming personalities, along with the unique species, and think, holy shit, this is literally F-Zero! Again, in everything but gameplay, obviously. Like, look at this part of the movie. That already looks like a roster select screen. And having a number of them show off their eccentric personalities for a small amount of time, it reminds me so much of F-Zero GX, only bigger and crazier and better animated. We even get to see various racers play each other off in scenes before the big race.
Gory Rider, you motherfucker!
Oh my god, I can't take it. Redline is just so perfect and made for me, and only me. And this also has the characters doing long-ass exchanges during the race, but whatever, it's still awesome.
In your dreams, you slimy piece of shit! Come and get me, you pussy!
The anime's original syndication and the companion GBA sequel would be the last pieces of official F-Zero media for a long time. With that said, before we get up to speed with the franchise, I want to talk about what I consider to be the biggest dead stop to F-Zero's actual potential as a series. F-Zero would hit a lull after the anime ended, and those GBA games made virtually no waves. It was a lull that would last nearly 20 years. There's various reasons why this happened. Shigeru Miyamoto, producer of the series and big figure at Nintendo, made some statements regarding F-Zero as years went on, but the most consistent one was that he felt they did everything they could with the series, and the only thing that would motivate them to make a brand new game is an interesting new idea or even new controller that would fit into F-Zero as a franchise.
We see a lot of other designers who are kind of making more traditional racing style games. So we try to focus on something that feels a little bit more gamey. So maybe if we create a new type of controller interface that's particularly suited for F-Zero, then maybe we'll do something again with it in the future. Since the first F-Zero on SNES, many games have been made, but the series has evolved very little. I thought people have grown weary of it. Why F-Zero? What do you want that we haven't done before?
To a degree, I can see where he's coming from. In a lot of ways, GX really did feel like the peak of intense futuristic racing, and frankly, nothing remotely similar to it has even a fragment of that game's package. Why asking simply for more of that is out of the question, I'll never know. It's not like Nintendo hasn't pulled this with various installments and remasters and such. There was a rumor about Criterion Games being approached to make a new game, but according to devs within the studio, it was literally a single email from some rando in Nintendo of Europe. Not that it matters much, but I personally think they could have made a bitchin' new F-Zero game that emphasizes the car attack mechanic, looking at their Burnout series. Nagoshi, head producer of F-Zero GX, still expresses interest in the series to this day, but is dream-crushingly realistic with his expectations.
Putting aside the odds of it happening, I must admit I have a lot of affection for F-Zero GX. If the opportunity for a sequel were to present itself, I wouldn't mind. And in that case, I'd like to make it a challenging game. I believe that if Nintendo just wants a racing game that is fun and accessible, they already have Mario Kart for that purpose.
Damn, that's just the way it is, isn't it? Bringing up Mario Kart is a real stinger, as that has been a thriving franchise that never stopped providing new installments. The 9th game in the series is literally about to hit us. You don't need me to tell you how humongous that franchise got, even making its way into the animated Mario movie. There are tons of people that don't care about video games at all, but they like Mario Kart. It doesn't take a genius to notice this is likely why Nintendo stopped giving any real attention to F-Zero. The art director of the original F-Zero and F-Zero X, Takaya Imamura, echoes Nagoshi's sentiment that a large factor of F-Zero's absence is due to the overwhelming success of the Mario Kart franchise.
I think F-Zero remains dormant because Mario Kart is Nintendo's most popular racing game, and a new F-Zero would cost a fortune.
And when the 8th Mario Kart game announced anti-gravity mechanics and tracks, well, proof's in the pudding, huh? If that's really the case though, that's frustrating since the games are not alike at all. The only thing these two franchises really share is that they're racing games. Even from the beginning, they don't really cater to the same demographic. And I'm not just talking about Mario Kart being more kid-friendly with its appearance and expressive characters driving the little carts across the Lego boarded track. I just mean the kind of challenge these games provide and what they demand from the player. I'm not claiming Mario Kart doesn't require skill or strategy. That would be ridiculous. There's a competitive aspect to that series that, as far as I can tell, really began to surface with its Nintendo 64 entry, and has only grown since then with the series' online capabilities. But a couple big factors that separate this series from F-Zero would have to be the fact that Mario Kart is much slower paced and items being such a prominent and focused mechanic. Things can get crazy in Mario Kart, and there's certainly some killer strategies you can pull off to bet on victory if you're skilled enough. But no matter how you look at these two games, it's undeniable that when you're talking about raw intensity and call for absolute precision, F-Zero is in a league of its own. And item use really topples the idea of consistency within Mario Kart, basically being that game's version of rubber banding in order to give everyone a chance to win the race, more or less. I also think it's worth emphasizing that F-Zero is primarily designed around the single-player experience. Mario Kart always felt like it was firstly designed around multiplayer. It was almost always advertised as such. I mean, just look at the screen of Super Mario Kart. On one hand, it's like a primitive way of executing widescreen mode, which is actually nice in its own weird way. but on the other, it makes me think it was designed with only multiplayer in mind. That's the second player screen that's instead being used as a map or whatever. Hell, Mario Kart Double Dash on the GameCube featured LAN play, which allowed up to 4 GameCubes to connect and have as many as 16 separate players do a single race. Mario Kart DS was literally the first Nintendo DS game to have live online multiplayer, and that feature is now a staple for the franchise. You get it. Then you look at F-Zero, the first game didn't even have multiplayer. Granted, it was the only one that didn't, but split-screen racing never seems to occupy anyone's minds when talking about these games. I didn't even feel the need to mention it in this video at all until now. However, I gotta be real with myself. These days, it isn't like Nintendo to cater to more than a single franchise when it comes to genres they attack. Back in the day, that was more common, but now, there's only one sci-fi action game, it's Metroid. There's only one sprawling adventure game set in ancient times, it's Legend of Zelda. There's only one third-person shooter, it's Splatoon. There's only one Pikmin-ass game, it's Pikmin. I fucking love Pikmin. So there's only one racing game they're going to bother supporting with high-end installments, and it's Mario Kart. This could just be a byproduct of game production getting so insanely expensive these days, and obviously when it comes to those early generations, Nintendo was still trying to see what stuck. They were more willing to experiment. I always thought that when it came to stuff like Mario, Donkey Kong, etc., they were geared more towards kids, and then they had stuff like Metroid and F-Zero that could appeal to a slightly older audience, the grown-ups even. That was until the grown-ups decided they wanted to keep playing Mario Kart. I saw this firsthand when I was 14 and entered a local Mario Kart 64 tournament being held in a game store near me and got my ass handed to me by a bunch of fat middle-aged dads. They didn't need another racing game that adults would like to play. They already had it. The Blue Falcon itself became a consistent unlockable vehicle in the Mario Kart games, and Mario Kart 8 was the first time we'd see the game be represented in the form of stages, Mute City and Big Blue. The overall design is pretty cute, and I love the song mixes. They're very jazzy, which is a nice throwback to the original compositions on SNES. I was definitely bitter about this DLC when it was first announced, but I vibed with it once I was rocking fools online in these courses. With Mario Kart still going strong, somehow milking a title for over 10 years, and we only recently got a good look at what they're doing next, which is sort of an open world Mario Kart game, I'm sure the justification towards keeping all the focus on Mario Kart as their racing franchise hasn't weakened. But with the Blue Falcon being the guest vehicle for Mario Kart, where does that leave Captain Falcon himself? Well... Of course, F-Zero wouldn't be completely absent from the world of Nintendo. In 1999, we saw them release the first of a legendary series. For the first Super Smash Bros. Entry, a handful of Nintendo IPs would receive representation in the form of 1 or 2 fighters. F-Zero was lucky enough to be included as it featured Captain Falcon as an unlockable character. And, similar to Fox McCloud, his entire moveset had to be made up as the games he was featured in never had him playable outside of his own vehicle. Of course, through this creative design, the developers involved probably didn't think they would change the face of how fans would perceive F-Zero forevermore. And this would go on for years and years. We've technically had 6 installments to Super Smash Bros., and it can even be argued that Captain Falcon himself has more association with that than his own series. Super Smash Bros. Was the first time Captain Falcon had voice lines as well, and they picked a great voice for him. Come on! He's fun, his character is an iconic part of the series, Fuck all the idiots that thought he was going to get cut out of Brawl when speculations were running wild. He's been my consistent main since the series started. I don't care how low tier he was in the aforementioned Brawl title. He has always been my first choice. But I don't know, in retrospect, there's just something about it that annoys me. The representation is cool and fun, but I think what bothers me was how it was all quote-unquote fans cared about for a while. But like some of the other characters in the Super Smash Bros. Series, it's something where you get to see current at the time representation of particular characters and such. You get to see these folks, their worlds, and a probable factor of how they could be represented in newer generations, if only for a second. You know, Popo and Nana have literally only had one game that came out like 100 years ago, but you still get to see them jump, pummel, and wobble around in the world of Ice Climbers, here and there thanks to Super Smash Bros. It was especially fun in Brawl's Subspace Emissary adventure, where we got to see many of these characters interact and play off of each other in different ways, including Douglas himself, of course. You monster! But even in that department, it felt like Captain Falcon kept getting the short end of the stick. He is literally the only character of the original roster that never got an IP relative as an additional fighter for the entire franchise. In another world, Black Shadow is his heavier equivalent, not Ganondorf. Samurai Goro at least got included as an assist trophy. I like to think most of the assist trophies represent characters that were considered for the roster during development. So at least he gets to actually appear in the... What the fuck? Where did his Rising Sun helmet go? Why the hell would they... Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Maybe that's why it looks so off in the anime. Also, the F-Zero stages were kind of lackluster after Melee. Seeing Mute City and Big Blue represented in GameCube hardware was nice, until its own game on the console made them look a billion times cooler less than 2 years later. When it came to Brawl, they recycled a lot of stage content in general, and that kind of became the standard. I don't blame them for that, seeing as how the Wii was basically a souped up GameCube, so Big Blue was reused, and Port Town from GX was the new stage rep for Captain Falcon. But why didn't they use the new Mute City instead? Especially since it's much more visually appealing. At least I thought so. Then for the later games, the only new stage was this SNES throwback Mute City stage, which just feels like a cop-out. I also wasn't a big fan of the new music either. The Melee mix from Mute City will always stand out, but almost everything else was mediocre. Or maybe I'm just tired of Mute City remixes. It's like their Green Hill Zone now. The only exception I make is the F-Zero medley by Takanobu Mitsuyoshi. It's really cute. Like, F-Zero got its own Daytona USA theme, the Doi, same composer, for another Sega installment that would never be. Captain Falcon's fabricated fighting style became such a big part of his recognized character, it bled onto the anime at the very last minute in a really shallow way. Thought I forgot to mention this before, didn't ya? Yeah, the DBZ-ass looking explosion is cool, and seeing the pure energy spew out of Black Shadow's orifice for a second was funny, but the whole thing just kind of irked me. It vindicates what I'm pontificating here, that Smash Bros. Takes up more real estate in F-Zero's legacy than F-Zero. It just feels icky to me. Say anything you want about F-Zero GX, they didn't feel the need to degrade our man in this way for the story mode or any part of the game. Our captain and this insane cast of cyberpunk-esque misfits are all about racing in this world. But I digress. I still play the shit out of all the Smash Bros. Games, and 90% of the time, it's as my boy Douglas here. The personality and bits of eccentric behavior are still a ton of fun and will probably never get old.
Falcon Punch!
There was one last piece of representation that's less popular. Back in 2012, the Wii U launched with a game known as Nintendo Land, a virtual theme park with an assortment of main attractions that are all derived from pre-existing IPs. Overall, it was actually a lot of fun with friends, but let's focus on one of the main attractions, Captain Falcon's Twister Race. Really, guys? You didn't call the other rides Samus Blast or Olimar Adventure. Is F-Zero just a fucking joke to you guys? It's sort of a time-limited trial with various hazards ahead, and it can get a bit challenging, but the slow pace almost feels like mockery. Sorry, I'm probably just overly sensitive to this kind of thing. Whatever, it's not really F-Zero at all, but it's fine. While F-Zero did make noise in other existing games, we wouldn't get anything regarding the futuristic racing series besides ports and excuses. Then, 2023 hit us. Nintendo's been in the fashion of doing live streams that announce upcoming games as well as surprise shadow drops. And these tend to be fun to tune into, but the air in the room would suddenly change as I heard an all too familiar sound. F-Zero. I remember watching this live and my heart sank at first seeing this preview open up. Here's a traumatization to my thoughts within the span of only a few seconds. Oh no, fuck no, this is some junky remake of the original, isn't it? They're about to fade into whatever the new 3D graphics are and it's gonna look like shit and ruin the art style, just like Demon's Souls, just like Front Mission, just like Advance Wars and House of the Dead. Fuck! Oh my god, if this is really what we're getting instead of remaining a dead franchise, I'll take the latter. Hey, you know what? I could just secure this rope right now around my neck. My ceiling beam can probably hold me. And then, not only did these delicious morsels of sprites stay, there was suddenly an assload of them. 99 to be specific. That's why it's called F-Zero 99. Never did I think I would see a preview of a new F-Zero project in my adult life and think, hey, that looks pretty cool actually. And for the price of free with the Nintendo Online service I was already mooching off a friend, how could I say no? Of course, I did see people turn their noses up at this game. That it's just another Battle Royale and sullies the spirit of F-Zero. I don't have anything particular against the Battle Royale system, but I haven't played PUBG or Fortnite in years. Although I did play Tetris 99, Pac-Man 99, and Mario 35 for a while. Tetris 99 was just awesome. Adds to the intensity in what is mostly just a regular Tetris game. The other two I mentioned had their server shut down, so I'm not even going to bring those up. But of course, F-Zero 99 is wildly different in the sense that it's closer to the Battle Royale standard that we are used to. And by that I mean it pits all 99 players into the track at once. These aren't separate races, we're all up in this single track at the same time. And while the beginning is just spinning madness, the bozos get weeded out pretty quickly, and if you play well, you're knee deep in the top 30 where the real racers are. The game's mechanics are like a blend of the original F-Zero and F-Zero X in so many ways. It's got the original game's tracks, music, visuals, stray cars, and physics, more or less, but mixed in are the spin attack, energy consumption boost, and large number of racers. It really is both games expertly melded together to make a great new experience. It isn't one-to-one with the original F-Zero, of course. The game's physics felt more sturdy and solid. This game plays looser. The best way to describe it, I think, is playing any of the original Mario games on NES or Super Mario World, and then playing one of the Mario Maker games immediately after. You can tell the physics are similar, but not identical, which is understandable considering it had to be remade from the ground up for this new experience. There's also a great rival system which pits you against 4 other racers around your skill level, so even if you don't get first place, it feels good beating out these rivals and gaining higher ranks. Speaking more on the visuals and presentation, it's pretty good. The menus are squeaky clean, and reusing assets from the original F-Zero's manual art for said menus adds a lot of personality. I mean, I would have liked new art, but this is nice. This art was technically never in any F-Zero game, so I give it a pass. I also like the customizable paint jobs and decals you can unlock for each vehicle. This not only encourages players to use all 4 vehicles for races, but adds this great illusion to the races that make them all look unique. It makes it easier to forget these are literally just 4 different cars on the course, and it more closely resembles the sequels that bore 10 times the bigger roster. a new mechanic they added is the Skyway boost. It's really neat and adds a layer to the racing that you can smartly take advantage of rather than attempt scrambling for first place all the time. Hanging back to collect these orbs can either make or break the race for you. Regardless of your skill or position, the Skyway boost mechanic makes you feel like you still have a shot in the race. Not to say skill isn't a factor, it certainly is, as I've seen F-Zero experts clear races like nobody's business. Also, in a funny way, this made me think how Nintendo approaches challenge and difficulty in their games. I don't think anyone can deny that they've laxed on pure challenge in their first-party games over the years, but while F-Zero 99's gameplay is certainly easy to understand, it's all the players that are adding the heavy challenge. There can only be one winner, and everyone's going to try their best getting first place. In a funny way, this was Nintendo finally going, you want a harder F-Zero game? Here, take it, but you got 98 other folks trying to get first place too. You're all making this game hard for each other now. I look at F-Zero 99 in two different ways. First, my initial impression of this game. I think it served as a good reminder to everyone that the core of F-Zero was mostly made up of intense, high-velocity racing. There's no story campaign, no real characters, just you, your ride, and a race to the finish. That's part of why I'm happy with this title. Well, also because it's fun. I got annoyed seeing folks immediately reject this piece, including people that don't even give a shit about F-Zero. I guarantee you that the graph of people immediately hating on something like F-Zero 99 and the people that would have blown fat loads in their pajama pants over some shitty looking Captain Falcon beat 'em up instead is a perfect circle. Make room for the real F-ucking Zero fans, you chumps. All 99 of us. But now, over a year deep into this game's life, and the community is just dwindling away, where even the main mode usually sees you joining a group of 10 to 25 people, and as soon as the counter finishes up, the remaining space is just filled with bots. So while this game was the talk of the town for a bit when Nintendo released it, there wasn't enough to keep people's attention. I think a lot of that has to do with how intense and nerve-wracking it gets when you're really going for first place. Things get fierce, they start planting a bunch of exploding ducks around you. It's a struggle. The kind of precision and skill you have to maintain in order to reach first place is demanding. While a lot of people probably had fun with the rowdy nature of racing in the same course with 98 other people, it got really intense and kind of stressful. And clearly not everyone vibed with that. A lot of said 99ers probably went back to Mario Kart 8, where despite having only 12 races in a single race, retains a thriving community. So in comes the second way I looked at F-Zero 99. It proved that F-Zero is inherently a single-player game, which I didn't realize was so obvious until I wrote this video. Like I said before, the original game didn't even have multiplayer, and while the rest of the F-Zero games do, it's never really something lauded by fans. There's a lot of game franchises where its multiplayer elements are what people come for, the selling point. But not F-Zero, which is peculiar for such a long-standing racing game. All of the attention is consistently given to what is provided with single player in mind. The Grand Prix Cups in the games, the story mode in GX, these are the legendary aspects of F-Zero, not four-way split screen. Of course, this isn't to belittle those modes. It's great that those features exist, and I'm sure people have fond memories of playing them with friends, siblings, etc. Consider this. How different would Super Smash Bros. Be if Melee came out, but all people cared about was the adventure mode? It's kind of like that for F-Zero. I don't think this is the type of game that really calls for a competitive multiplayer mode, at least not as the focus. That isn't to say the formula can't work, it clearly can. I've sunk hours into F-Zero 99 and it remains consistently fun, and clearly other people seem to like it as well. I feel like if they ever wanted to make a follow-up to this, there's room for opportunity. It's cool that they added post-launch content like the BS courses from that forgotten Super Famicom sequel. It'd be cool if they somehow brought in customizable courses too. I guess what I'm asking for is a Mario Maker equivalent to F-Zero. Playing 99 as much as I did tells me that kind of project is possible. Financially viable? I don't know. But it is certainly possible. Honestly, I'd be perfectly satisfied with an updated version of F-Zero GX. Bring that onto the latest Nintendo hardware in HD, maybe add 5 new courses that make up a new cup. I'm sure people would want an online multiplayer mode, but I think the core mechanics would need to be reworked. Otherwise, players are just going to wreck each other at an instant considering how easy it is to do such in single player. While I was writing this, Nintendo announced the Nintendo Switch 2, and that they're also adding GameCube games to their online subscription library. And F-Zero GX is one of the first games for it. Obviously, all of its contents and features will remain unchanged, so that's something. Either way, things still don't look too bright for the series, even with this 2023 installment.
Let me into your pain.
I got no hate in my heart when I see you. You know that I'm fucked up, yeah, I'm fucked up, I got issues. I can't let it stop me, so I gotta win, I can never lose. Cause I still got big dreams, yeah, I'm flying high, I'm a big blue. I got no hate in my heart when I see you. You know that I'm fucked up, yeah, I'm fucked up, I got issues. I can't let it stop me, so I gotta win, I can never lose. Cause I still got big dreams, yeah, I'm flying high, I'm a big blue. Big blue.
F-Zero as a franchise takes up a big part of my heart. I cherish the ambition, style, presentation, and hard-as-balls challenge it showcased with nearly every entry. It's a part of Nintendo that isn't really around anymore, but I'll never forget for as long as I live.
Gotta get some shit off my chest, but you know I might regret. Been a long time since HMD, but I still feel a little pathetic. Fuck all that sad boy shit, really feel this pain, ain't no aesthetic. Reach up and clutch my fist in the sky and yell, the world let's get. Plan full of evil, I don't really need your help. I can't let this shit control me, give me freedom from this hell. Servants taking power, watch them snake, they wait a well. Moving like these cowards, man, I'd rather kill myself.
As for the developers that made the series so great, Kazunobu Shimizu, director of the original F-Zero, is still a part of Nintendo. His name can be found in the credits of recent projects here and there. Yasunari Nishida, the programmer of the original F-Zero, was making noise for a while, but hasn't really done anything that recent as far as I can tell. Takaya Imamura, the original art director for F-Zero, as well as F-Zero X, stuck with Nintendo for decades. For those wondering, he was also the art director for Star Fox as well as Star Fox 64, and created what I would call the second most iconic imagery of the entire Legend of Zelda series, which is Majora's Mask. Like, the actual mask, which I think the only object more recognizable would be the Triforce itself. Imamura recently went independent, working on his own projects, including an original sci-fi manga series known as Omega 6, which is only just arriving with an official translation in October of this year, but a tie-in game has launched on Steam and Switch. Omega 6 The Triangle Stars, which features copyright-free Dr. Stewart and Jodie Summer as the main characters. It's an RPG with a very simple rock-paper-scissors mechanic, and it also contains a robust story where you interact with many alien characters. Seriously, so many of these might as well be missing characters from the Star Fox and F-Zero games. Check it out, it's a cool little game with funny dialogue and an intriguing story. As for the team behind F-Zero GX, as Sega was dissolving their arcade teams throughout the years, many of Amusement Vision's members would form Ryoga Gotoku Studio. This team would go on to create the Yakuza / Like a Dragon games, a series that Toshihiro Nagoshi, the head producer of GX, would focus on for nearly 2 decades before leaving the studio to form his own Nagoshi Studio, as subsidiary of NetEase Games. Which, things aren't looking too bright, but let's not dwell on that, huh? Frankly, I'm seeing a good number of familiar names of GX's credits across the Yakuza games, most notably, I think, being Hidenori Shoji, the lead composer. He would be the music director for nearly every game in the Yakuza series. I still remember hearing some of these tracks for the first time thinking, that guitar sounds familiar. So discovering this was a pleasant surprise. As for F-Zero's Eternal Masters, I can at least appreciate Nintendo trying new things with this series every time, as they had ambitions for F-Zero since the very beginning. The original game had a sort of sequel on the same console that took advantage of this broadcast system they provided in Japan back in the day, known as Satellaview, a modem for the Super Nintendo that let you download and play certain content for games. This included new courses and vehicles. And, as mentioned previously, the F-Zero X expansion kit for the N64 disk drive and F-Zero GX's arcade counterpart. GX also added a shit ton of world building with its story mode and character endings. Basically what I'm saying is, Nintendo at the very least always tried to keep F-Zero interesting in different ways. Kinda helps put F-Zero 99 into context. Some say it was very minimal effort or even insulting to F-Zero fans, but I think this entry helps identify the F-Zero spirit in a certain sense. I think the game has that F-Zero heart beating in this little free-to-play game. I might be fabricating some things here, but I think a problem Nintendo faces is the character variety. F-Zero didn't receive one, but two banger-ass games with this cast of 30 whack jobs fueled by the same desire to go fast. And I've played both of these games so much with the entire cast, only adoring them more and more as time went on. With that said, making a new game without all 30 of these racers would just feel wrong if we're talking a bigger scale than, say, F-Zero 99. So much so that even the Game Boy games based on the anime included all of them. It probably felt like an obligation. The only ones people don't seem to be broken up about leaving the party are those original to games outside of F-Zero X. Like, if you're gonna make a new F-Zero game, sure, leave out Deathborn, Rick Wheeler, Harry Potter, and I don't give a shit about them. But if you dare make a brand new F-Zero that sports an array of characters and you leave out Dr. Clash or Kate Allen or the Poop Brothers, I'm burning my fucking house down. I can't help it. I love all of these characters so much, especially after they sported such a wide array of personality in GX. I still get such a warm, happy feeling seeing all of them celebrate the end of the Grand Prix whenever I play through one. It's kind of the precedent Smash Bros. Faces at this point. Sure, Sakurai said he considers this the end of the series, but I doubt anything is stopping Nintendo from making new installments in the future without him. The last entry, Smash Bros. Ultimate, did the unthinkable and had literally every single playable character in the past return, all while adding a shit ton of new fighters too. The end result makes the actual character select screen look stunningly close to those old photoshops people posted around everywhere back in the early 2000s. With that said, I can't imagine a new installment that doesn't include literally this roster in its entirety and then some. Unless they reboot the series into a completely different direction, like making a more traditional fighter or something. I just don't see fans being crazy about the idea of leaving full characters behind unless it's a completely new experience. The point is, like Smash players, I, as an F-Zero fan, have become far too attached to every single individual character of the 30-count roster of racers. Of course, I may be giving this nostalgic adoration too much credence. I'm pretty sure they'll do whatever the hell they want if they ever do make a new, true Big Blue F-Zero installment, which could even include replacing most of the cast. But hey, if the new characters are teaming with dope-ass designs and unique personalities, I'm sure I'll come around. I'll put the torch down.
Watch your back! You're about to lose the lead!
It's funny, I actually started writing this video more than 5 years ago, and the original drive was to critique certain games made by indie developers that dabbled with the futuristic racing subgenre. But to be honest, it felt more like I was disparaging them for not being just like F-Zero GX or whatever. It was turning out extremely regressive and frankly narrow-minded, so I scrapped the entire script. I realized these devs shouldn't be shamed for their efforts, and their games deserve to exist in their own right. I'd also like to take a moment to highlight Aero GPX, which I think does a pretty good job satiating that craving for intense futuristic racing. It's probably the closest any of these games have gotten to being similar to the best F-Zero has to offer, while still providing unique aspects to the core gameplay itself.
Lap 2, keep it up!
Perhaps some of these teams made the games they did simply because they missed F-Zero and wanted to express something in the futuristic racing subgenre rather than keep waiting, and I find that really commendable. It's not easy releasing a full game that isn't shovelware junk. While F-Zero 99 seems to have brought a lot of people together to take a crack at some futuristic racing from the series that defined it, I think the posterity of this franchise remains ambiguous. There's hope to be had for sure, but who really knows what the likes of Nintendo are considering, or if this is even meant to be a test for what the series is capable of being in the future. So it's good that these developers just try to make their own, right? Talking more about games inspired by F-Zero and those that happen to be part of the futuristic racing subgenre, I think I know what is universally absent in most of these games. The characters. Who are the pilots? What are their traits, their personalities, or choice of wardrobe? Why don't we get any sort of pilot profiles for all these vehicles? Of course, I think I sort of know the answer as to why. Games are expensive to make, at least the ones that appear to give half a shit. That includes indie games, of course. And I noticed that a lot of futuristic racers, while providing some great visuals and fun gameplay, tend to have very simple designs overall. Whomever the devs are, I think they put in everything they were capable of, as well as their budget. And it would be really, really hard to fill up that vehicle roster with unique racers. That includes conceptualizing and designing a few dozen original characters, and then properly commission an artist and pay them a respectable amount for various pieces. The likes of Imamura wore multiple hats and was under Nintendo's payroll. He was going to do anything they asked. The industry doesn't really work like that for a lot of people, obviously not the indie teams that are working under their own roofs rather than a multi-billion-dollar corporation. So I get it. I just love the unique character designs so much, even if they aren't that imperative to the core gameplay. So far, the only indie racer I've played that provided a proper character roster is Aero GPX, and it's not even finished. I'm not gonna lie, I think it adds a lot to the experience and adds to why I recommend that one above the rest. So in the end, all I wanted to do was express my adoration for F-Zero, another cornerstone of my childhood, and something that still means a lot to me now. I've long become accustomed to how quiet this series is, so much that seeing it make any sort of noise is always a fun surprise. I'll keep an ear out for the series as long as I live. But just like the run and gun subgenre, I'll do my best checking out the more independent projects inspired by it. Thanks so much for watching, and maybe I'll see you on the tracks. Oh, one last thing. Wipeout fucking sucks.